yourself a cold one.
Let's strike 'em, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of the College Draft.
Yeah, it is Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft podcast, presented today by our awesome YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Please check it out. Hopefully most of you already know. If you subscribe, it's free, obviously. But if you comment on any of the videos, we post the highlights of all of our shows, even Money Podcast, Fantasy Feast Podcast, Business of Sports Podcast, and of course, the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, where we talked with Jenny Vrentis this morning from Sports Illustrated about Jack Easterby. Nobody knows more about Jack Easterby than Jenny Vrentis. Plus, minority hiring in the NFL, female roles in the NFL. Really fun chat with Jenny. Check that out. But as long as you comment on any of our YouTube videos, you are automatically entered to win a cameo-style shout-out from yours truly, Ross Tucker, the former NFL offensive lineman. You can see the helmet and the game balls and whatever behind me for those of you that either watch the social media clips at Ross Tucker NFL, at Ross Tucker Pod, or check the show out on YouTube. The star of this show, though, it's Emory Hunt. He's an absolute rock star. Just remember, 2 years from now, when he's a household name, that I told you he would be a household name. He's incredibly hardworking. He's everywhere. His draft guide is the best draft guide I'm aware of. footballgameplan.com/2021 draft guide. And the time to get it is now. I mean, the time to order it is now. Emory, when's it looking like, since there's no real combine, when's it looking like that's going to come out?
Well, that's a great question because we got great news. And because I hadn't traveled to all the All-Star games in January, we're looking ahead of schedule. You know, I'm finishing wide receivers probably tomorrow, moving on to tight ends, and I should be done with the offense by next Tuesday, which would allow me to start defense. So I would say maybe right around, maybe 2 weeks from now, we'll have the draft guide in hand.
Awesome. Well, again, footballgameplan.com/2021 draft guide. At FBallGamePlan is how you can always be aware of the different things that Emory's doing. That's on Twitter. And then, of course, his YouTube channel is awesome, Football Game Plan on YouTube. So here's what we're going to do today, Emory. Really three different things, I guess two major different topics, right? Number one, I wanted to get the three guys that jumped out to you the most from both the Senior Bowl and the Hula Bowl over the weekend. And then I wanted to dive into these Super Bowl rosters a little bit with you and just see what scouting lessons can be learned, if any, from looking at these Super Bowl teams. Very fired up about it. Let's start, though, with the Senior Bowl, because it looked like Kellen Mond from Texas A&M had a good week, certainly had a good game, and I saw just from your Twitter that you were impressed with how he was throwing the ball.
Man, listen, when he throws, it legitimately looks like he's throwing a baseball right down the middle. It's just, it comes out, smooth, fast, hot, and it gets to where it needs to be in an instant. So you like that he's throwing the football hard with confidence. And I thought the placement was where it needed to be in that game. Now, he's still, it's weird with Kellen Mond because he's super productive. Like they said during the broadcast, outside of Johnny Manziel, Mond has all those records, at Texas A&M. But it's something about his game that, the throwing is great, but it still looks robotic a lot of times. But, man, he was the most impressive quarterback, I thought, during that whole Senior Bowl game, and he won the MVP. But, again, when you're able to throw those, in-breaking routes with that much velocity, and it, as a receiver, you almost have no choice but to catch it because the ball going to stick to you, because it's like that movie Necessary Roughness where the ball sticks to the guy in the face mask. That's how hard he throws.
So here's the question, Emory, in my mind, which is, what are the knocks on Kellen Mond?
I think, just from watching this film, I think placement is inconsistent. The accuracy is where it needs to be, but placement and accuracy are two different things. And I think placement is where, he has to become much more consistent. And like I said, the robotic nature of his game, you're sitting there watching him play and you say, man, just take off. Or why does it look like it's going through, a processing speed, as opposed to just go out there and just play. I think if he could just cut it loose and just play and not see, it seems like he's thinking too much out there, which gets you to hold the football long to the last possible minute, and it affects everything about your game. But the physical talents you just want him just to go out there and just play, man, not worry about making the right decision every time. I think that's what leads to his robotic nature.
Interesting. The other thing I thought was interesting, I always like Senior Bowl and events like this. I like when guys that people don't know as much about, step up. And I also like, there are times when a guy has been overshadowed by someone else on his college team at the same position. And I feel like that's the case with Dez Fitzpatrick from Louisville. It feels like he kind of always got overshadowed by Tutu Atwell.
Right. And we always talked about Tutu Atwell because he probably had the most dynamic plays of the two. But watching Fitzpatrick all week at practice, watching the Senior Bowl practice film, and then watching the game, you saw what he did on the practice field translate to the game. And then, pouring through his film at Louisville, you saw a lot of the same. He's just as consistent as he was on game day at the Senior Bowl, route running, being able to separate, catching the ball away from his body, all those things you want to see receivers do. He's able to do that very well. And again, he may not be as dynamic as Tutu Atwell, but when you talk about consistency, that's what the pros want. That's what that's how you are able to stay in the league for a long time. And I think that's the future for Fitzpatrick.
The other guy, speaking of kind of under the radar guys that people, I knew about him because I've done a couple of his games, but not a lot of people knew about Cam Sample, the defensive lineman from Tulane.
He's versatile, man. You could put him anywhere along that defensive line, and he's going to find a way to the quarterback or find a way to a TFL or find a way to just be disruptive. And I like that he can win with both quickness and also power. And, the scouting term converts speed to power. I think he does that well. And for a defensive lineman, I think for him, not being 6'7" or 6'6" or 6'5", being able to get into a offensive lineman's chest pretty quickly, he has control, and that's why he's able to win, because he wins that hands first game that you have to win up front, whether you're O-line or D-lineman, and he's always consistent in that area, and we saw that in the game play itself out.
It's a good point, Emory. People get really excited about length, and I understand why, but you go against some of those 6'2", 6'3" guys, they're just, it's hard to get leverage on them. It's hard to get leverage on them, and they can be, if you're 6'2" and a half, 280, you are a thick, powerful dude. And a lot of times those guys can move well. Sometimes guys like him end up getting to 295 and becoming 3 techniques.
Think about this, and I always use this for people that tend to think the opposite way, is think about Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson did not have the reach against virtually 95% of the boxers he went against. Guess who was able to get inside and knock people out with power? Mike Tyson. So it didn't matter if you have long arms, and it take you a little bit longer to get your hands up or get your punch out quicker than slower than a guy that has a shorter reach, but he's a little bit quicker, a little bit more agile, a little bit more apt to move around. He's gonna win. It's not about length; it's about quickness, and I think that's the difference. If you have long arms and you're quick, goodness, you know what I'm saying? But if you are short, you better be quick. If not, you're not going to win many battles.
Well, and not only that, if you are short but have long arms, that might be the best of both worlds.
Leverage.
Like if I could be an offensive lineman again, Emory, I'd want to be like an interior offensive lineman. 6'2" and a half, 6'3" is fine. But if you give me the long arms, I'll take the long arms as well. Speaking of like 6'3", the other guy, and this is going to relate to one of my Super Bowl lessons, the other guy that tore up the Senior Bowl was this Quinn Meinerz, the D3 center from Wisconsin Whitewater. I mean, all day, every day on the social media clips, he was just killing dudes out there.
Yeah, this is the type of game where everyone else kind of realizes that there's good football players outside of the Power Five, and all of a sudden everyone wants to talk. Oh wow, like the NFL really finds them. Like, yeah, the NFL has always done that. However, it's hard to get through the thick media skull that yes, you can play good quality pro football outside of the SEC, and so it's always great to see these guys from the lower levels get in there and do well. Because again, we talked about this before. A guy like Quinn Meinerz probably was undersized coming out of high school. So when you think about Power 5 prospects coming out of high school, they're more closer to finished products. And height, weight, speed, athleticism, they check all of those boxes. They develop faster than everyone else. So therefore you go down a peg as far as level is concerned. So yeah, the dude probably was 6'2", maybe was about 225 pounds playing guard in high school. And yeah, he ballooned, but in the right way to where he is now. But if you're a Power 5 recruiter, you're not going to take a chance on a 6'2", 235-pound guard. No, you have your pick of the litter at guys that already meet your height, weight, speed, athleticism metrics.
Let's get to the Hula Bowl, because the Hula Bowl doesn't get nearly as much attention as the Senior Bowl. Let's start with the wide receiver from Illinois that caught your attention this week.
Josh Imatorbhebhe. I wanted to make sure I get it out there. Imatorbhebhe, that's what it is. So say it again.
Sounds like he wants to eat a baby.
Right. Exactly. It took me a while that you have to listen to. You listen to a couple broadcasts, and like 6 different broadcasts says 6 different ways, but it's Imatorbhebhe. And what I like about him, he went to USC, so he has elite level athleticism and talent, transferred to Illinois, and despite their passing game not being much of anything, you still saw the talent on display. So watching him out there and watching him be able to run routes and get open with his speed and athleticism, it reminds me a lot of Allen Robinson and how he's able to work himself open. He's a 6'2", 220, well put together, but has all of those traits that we see Robinson have out there on Sunday. And I think he could have that same type of projection in the NFL. This is a case where a guy may end up being a better pro than he was in college based off the situation around him, not his talent.
Got it. Now, the next guy is another guy that's not Power 5, and I've called one of his games, and he was very impressive. That's UAB running back Spencer Brown, big boy that was productive for a number of years for the Blazers.
Yeah, and watching his junior tape, I thought he was more, a guy like Spencer Ware, or maybe had, a pathway to being a fullback. But this year, I thought he dropped a little bit of weight, which is great. He picked up some quickness and some burst, and he runs with an attitude. And I like the attitude that he runs, and I like the fact that he, self-scouted himself and said, maybe I'm a little bit too heavy. Let me drop 5 to maybe 10 pounds and pick up some quickness and burst, and it helped improve his game. Now, he is the all-time leading rusher at UAB, so he was productive, but now because of the drop weight, the quickness, and the burst that he picked up, we may see him be, he makes a much better projection to the pro game as a tailback as opposed to having to move to fullback.
Then the last guy we want to talk about specifically in the Hula Bowl was another D lineman. This is Phil Hoskins from Kentucky.
Now, he well-traveled. He was a JUCO guy, granted his 6th year at Kentucky. So a game like this really is beneficial for him because he just needs reps against, top quality competition. Now, he got that at Kentucky. He played well this year. He missed a couple games on the front end and on the back end, but you saw a guy that got better every week. And I thought the last stretch of the season, he was playing his best ball. And for him at 6'5", 315, he was playing, the 5 tech in their 3-3-5 defense or 3-4 defense. But I think he's probably more of a 1 tech because he's quick off the ball. He could be a disruptor. Putting him on the outside kind of leaves him, susceptible to more tackles that have a little bit more savvy than he does right now. But as a quick 1 gap penetrator, as a one technique or even a shade, I think he has a future. So a game like the Hula Bowl was definitely beneficial for him, seeing where he could project more so at the pro level.
All right, the next thing we want to do, Emory, which I'm really fired up about, is look at the Super Bowl rosters for the Chiefs and the Bucs and talk about some scouting lessons that we should all keep in mind. These are the two best teams. These are the teams in the Super Bowl. Some scouting lessons that people should keep in mind when they're looking at building teams and draft picks over the next couple months, free agency and the draft. Speaking, by the way, of the Super Bowl, how about this, Emory? This is crazy, okay? I am in love with the offers that DraftKings has this week. Number one, all right, DraftKings Sportsbook is doubling your money if a touchdown is scored in the big game. This is not new users. This is all users. Doubling your money if a touchdown scored in the big game. All it takes is for one touchdown, boom, your money is doubled. Sounds like a no-brainer to me. Then I love this DraftKings Big Game Prediction Challenge with up to $55 million in total prizes up for grabs and instant prizes for everyone who enters the contest. So think about this, right? As soon as you enter, it's just predictions. You get between $3 and $25,000. And then if you do well in the predictions, you can get a lot more. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code Ross to get a shot at doubling your money if a touchdown is scored in Sunday's game. That's promo code Ross to get a shot at doubling your money during Sunday night season finale only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/prediction-challenge-DFS for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's dive into it, Emory. We're going to go back and forth. I don't even know what your lessons are going to be. I'll start. One of my lessons relates to the interior of the Bucs offensive line. They're all good players. The left guard, Ali Marpet, Division III Hobart. The center, Ryan Jensen, Division II Colorado State Pueblo. Most of you listening have never heard of either one of those schools, Hobart or Colorado Pueblo. And then the normal right guard who got hurt a couple weeks ago, Alex Kappa, he is from another Division II school, Humboldt State. So think about that. The interior trio for the Bucs normally, all Division II and Division III guys, and they're good. Jensen and Marpet are as good as anybody at their positions in the whole league. Kappa's not there yet, but I do think he's getting there. He's still a young guy. He got drafted last year in 2018. And so I think the lesson there, Emory, if these guys are good enough to be starters, if these guys are good enough to be drafted second, third round, whatever, there are other FCS D2, D3 guys out there that are worthy of being late round picks that I believe are being overlooked. Maybe it's Quinn Meinerz, whatever, but there are other guys. If you can have D2, D3 guys, Emory, be at this high end, like these guys, then there's other guys that could be your swing inside guy, your swing tackle, whatever, that are getting lost in the cracks that could be 6th, 7th round picks, end up being good players for your team.
Ross, think about this, and you could speak to this eloquently. Think about how good you were as a high school football player, and then think about how much better you got at Princeton when you had access to nutrition and college strength and conditioning program. Think about the development you made throughout the course of your career. And that's what we're seeing with guys going from Division II, Division III, and then going in, that have talent that dominated their competition at their level, which is what you're supposed to do, and then go to the NFL and continue to get better, where we see guys maybe from Power 5 schools or FBS programs stabilize, like they flatline their level of growth. which is not necessarily bad. If you're good, then that means you're going to be consistently good. But guys are consistently getting better from these lower levels because of the fact that they have even more access to the same amenities and things that Power 5 guys had all throughout their college career. So that's a great point. I think for me, when I look at the Chiefs, I look at two players in particular, Pat Mahomes and also L'Jarius Sneed and Tyrann Mathieu, 3 players. And going back to my old scouting report, I had first round grades on, I had obviously Mahomes was my number graded out as the highest quarterback I had in that draft class, although I capped the numbers off at 90. So it was Watson, Mahomes, and Deshaun Kaiser all had with a 90, but on paper, Mahomes had a 93. And I was afraid. I'm like, am I just liking Mahomes tape too much? Like, I can't put a 93. That's almost, Hall of Fame worthy. So I capped everybody's grade at 90. But going back to that point, I'm like, man, if you like what you see and your eyes never tell you wrong, then trust it. Put it on paper. If you're wrong, be wrong. But if you're right, man, it's going to look good. But it's about trusting what you see. For L'Jarius Sneed and Tyrann Mathieu's point of view, I learned the fact that, traits translate. I had a high grade on Tyrann Mathieu, had a first round grade on when everybody was knocking him for off the field stuff, but they also questioned some of his on the field stuff. But I said in my notes, if this dude that plays defense always has the ball in his hands, that's the guy I want on my team. I want those guys that find a way to the football. And that translates. If you can make plays on the ball, you're going to make plays on the ball at the pro level. And for Sneed, it was about the traits, because at Louisiana Tech, when I was at the Marshall game last year, he was playing free safety. So what you're seeing now in the NFL is him playing off coverage, making a lot of plays on the ball, which sounds a lot like what? Playing free safety. And now that you see him get a little bit more nuance at corner, because he played corner 2 years ago before moving to safety. And I've seen this before because we did this when we were in college. Charles Tillman was playing corner, and teams stopped throwing to his side. So we had to move him to free safety so he could make more plays on the ball, because teams wouldn't throw at him when he was at corner. So it allowed us to get more talent on the field. So watching Sneed go out there and do great things, you saw the difference in the secondary instantly when he got back from injury. So traits translate. If you don't want to focus on production per se, that's great. But if you have certain traits that translate to the NFL, that's key. And for Pat Mahomes, it's about just trusting what you see. If this dude is balling like this, it's not a mirage, it's not nonsense. Trust what you're seeing.
Another one for me, I got a bunch I could go to, Emory, but another one for me is just speed. And I think we already know that. But like Scotty Miller was a great 6th round pick. I mean, Scotty Miller, I don't even know what college Scotty went to. Where did he go? Scotty Miller, Bowling Green. I didn't realize that. Scotty Miller's Bowling Green in the MAC. Having guys that are just lightning. So you got Scotty Miller for the Bucs, and obviously for the Chiefs. Tyreek Hill was a 5th round pick. I don't know how much of that was the off the field stuff. Hardman was a 2nd round pick, but even Byron Pringle can roll as a college free agent that they got out of Kansas State. If you have late round picks and there's dudes up there that run a 4.2 or a 4.3, you might want to take one or two of them. I even saw that a little bit from the Eagles this past year. Hightower made a couple big plays down the field. Quez Watkins made a big play. You can always take a shot on speed is, I guess, what my takeaway would be there.
Think about the another guy that hadn't played a lot this year, but he has that speed, and he's for the Bucs. Another small school guy, Justin Watson from Penn. Like, he could fly. And he was a 200-meter champion in high school. Ridiculous speed. You saw him do all kind of crazy things at Penn as far as catch and run is concerned. Another one of the things that I noticed too, that scouting lessons, it involves the running back position, obviously, but looking at how different guys look in the NFL. With Fournette coming out of I've been watching Fournette since his high school career, because my old high school coach coached him in high school. And so watching Fournette blossom into what he is now shows you that guys can continue to work on their game. Coming out of college, I compared him, and this is where I also get unique with comparisons, because people tend to see names and think it's a 1-for-1. But for me, I compared him to USFL version of Herschel Walker, the New Jersey Generals, right? I'm talking about eye back, one cut downhill, explosive, and if the lane is there, boom, he can go. Now, if I was to say Herschel Walker with the Cowboys or Herschel Walker with the rest of the NFL, people forget how versatile Herschel Walker was as an NFL player. Being able to line up out wide and run deep down the field, be a threat in the passing game. But USFL version was more of your classic back that we don't see anymore, to be honest. And so for Fournette, watching how he was able to evolve his game this year, really started last year where he was able to catch the football a little bit more with Jacksonville than this season, showing a little bit more, lateral quickness and footwork, getting himself out of trouble a lot. I was impressed. So yes, what your scouting report says coming out of college is usually based off what you've done in college. And for me, at least in the media, and I know scouts are paid to project. So watching what Fournette has done, that's an addendum you would add to his scouting report that, okay, he now has a better grasp on, the vision part and the lateral agility part and making a guy miss instead of trying to run everybody over. So watching someone, evolve their game past their scouting report is something that I definitely learned as well.
Last thing, I guess, for me, two of them one would be there's more value than I think some teams believe in linebackers that can really run. Devin White and Levante David have been huge difference makers for the Bucs, and I think people need to realize that. I also think DB is a good place to throw some numbers at it and kind of see what sticks. You mentioned L'Jarius Sneed. Rashad Fenton's a good 6th-round pick for the Chiefs as well. And then you go to the Bucs. Not all of them have hit, right? Like Mike Edwards, the 3rd-round pick, doesn't play that much, but Jordan Whitehead in the 4th round, Sean Murphy-Bunting 2nd round, Carlton Davis 2nd round, Jamel Dean 3rd round. I think you get guys with traits, guys with ability, and even if one doesn't make it, you got enough other resources there that you're going to get some young players on first contracts that can really play pretty well for you.
And to piggyback off one of your points talking about Devin White, and people are amazed at how he's able to make these one-on-one tackles. What they don't understand is that this dude grew up wrangling horses. You think these, 210-pound running backs or wide receivers gonna get away from a dude that's used to handling horses? You crazy? Like, no, that's light work for him. But on the back end, my last one is about draft picks. And we see this a lot with fans, and they're fascinated with mock drafts, and they're always interested in the first round. A lot of people in the media are always interested in the first round, but I look at it from a philosophy of you only get 7 picks. So yes, you can find starters with those 7 picks. You got 250, 60 something picks in the draft, or 54. And you mean to tell me out of the top seniors, which you probably have over 8,000 to choose from, the top 252, you mean to tell me that you're going to think a 7th round pick is not good? Like, no, you have an opportunity to hit on all of these picks. So you have to take each pick or treat each pick like it's a first round pick, because we just ran through about 12 players that none of them went in the first round. You know what I'm saying? Maybe 1 or 2, like Mahomes and Fournette, but everybody else was after the first round. So if you treat each pick like a first round pick, you're going to find guys that can help you out immediately and help your team get better. That's why the draft is the quickest way to get better as a football team.
Check him out on Twitter at FBallGamePlan. Perhaps more importantly, footballgameplan.com/2021 draft guide. You're going to enjoy all the podcasts we have for you this week on the Ross Tucker Podcast Network. The Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money tomorrow, what Super Bowl bets you should place. Fantasy Feast on Wednesday, we'll talk DFS and prop bets. Of course, we'll have Andrew Brandt, Greg Cosell, and some surprises on the Ross Tucker podcast as well. Other than that, the keg is kicked. We are all tapped out.
Thanks for listening to the College Draft Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Fantasy Feast, Even Money, and The Business of Sports. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.